Hi, I'm Akilora.
Naam Rohan Nahar.
Welcome to The Long Take. This week we're discussing the new Avatar movie, which is funny because this is James Cameron's first movie in 13 years. So I was wondering, Rohan, that we could have been doing this podcast for 12 years and we have never done a James Cameron movie. It's potential for a podcast to have happen, but I guess we're lucky or depends on unlucky enough, given what you made of the movie.
Yeah, I loved it. I think this is the kind of movie that they don't really make anymore, especially at this scale. So I'm at the stage where I'm like, anything that's non-Marvel-y, I will enjoy.
What makes this non-Marvel-y for you?
I mean, just the in the simplest of, in a nutshell, there is a solid 1 hour stretch where nothing happens except just chill out vibes. And I'm like,
but it's almost I feel I was thinking about that as well. I was like, is that intentional by Cameron that that his second act is basically there is no story. He just wants to showcase oh look, we're in a new biome now and just gonna show people interacting and look at our cool creatures and look at all the VFX money I've spent. Or is this because he doesn't have a story to tell?
Of course he has a story to tell. The fact that he rushes through 500 pages of story in a voiceover शुरू के 10 minutes में means that he knows exactly what he wants to do. He could have made a movie out of just the voiceover that Jake Sully does in the opening of this movie, right? But the fact that he's
but that's a gimmick to get the humans back.
Yeah, but then there is a movie there, right? But he chooses not to tell that, make that movie. He chooses to make this movie, which involves, and structurally this movie and the first movie is very similar, right? In the first movie also, when Jake is learning the ways of the Na'vi, there's no action scene or anything, right? He's just flying around and we see glorious
because
vistas.
you're introducing us to the world for the first time, right? That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to slowly introduce Pandora's, oh look, they have creatures like this who we have to bond with. You have floating mountains, we have this, we have that.
वो same चीज फिर से किया इसने, but
because
longer.
he almost it's a soft reset, right? He just put them in a new part of the same. It's not even a planet. I think it's a moon.
Which I feel it's also partially because 13 years have passed. So, we are watching, I'm assuming we watched the first movie in theaters. But then there's going to be a huge chunk of the audience that did not, right? And they watched probably
they'll watch
home.
It probably back to back. They watch Avatar at home and then go watch Avatar in the theaters.
Yeah, and then I know people who haven't seen the first movie at all and they've gone to see this one, right? And this functions as similarly, you watch it and you're like, he is reintroducing you to this world and he is introducing you to this world as well.
And I think he has to be smarter to do that, because if you do not let your sequel, which has come so far, so many years after the first one, then you're sort of losing a part of the audience, right? There will be kids who can watch this movie who were not born then.
Sure, yeah.
So you better make your movie in a way that it is welcoming, which is why they're re-explaining so many things. When it works because the Colonel Quads, the villain sort of is coming back as an avatar. He needs to be explained to as well, who his former self was. But in a way, that's actually speaking to us as well, because people who have never seen the first one will need to be told that what is the dynamic between the protagonist and the antagonist.
The cool thing is that there is no dynamic, right? Because he's essentially a different character who functions similarly to that one. So it even if you kind of find yourself zoning out during those narration voiceover things, the beginning, where they explain that this guy was downloaded from his consciousness or whatever, I tune out in those scenes, right? You need to know just the bare minimum and you're good to go. But even if you do, then this functions as a purely fresh character, right? It's not he's motivated because of some personal vendetta, right? He's told कि ये बंदा insurgency lead कर रहा है and he has to be stopped, right? It's just
it's a very mission-oriented thing. And I don't, his earlier memories are just, I think, influencing how he approaches things, not what he feels about this guy.
Yeah, that's just his personality, which is kind of feeding into this. It's not really any, and I felt that was smart. You can watch this movie cold and just be in for the ride. It doesn't really matter.
Although
even
what
though
didn't
there is
work
so
with
much
Colin for me was the other part is that because the other reason they gave him the memories was so that they could develop some kind of connection between him and the spider kid, right? Which is his biological human's child, not his kid, which he keeps reiterating. but eventually like the movie pushes him to a point where he sort of like starts whatever connecting with him or like feeling for this kid. And I was like, I don't really buy this, like, because the character is like out loud saying, oh yeah, like he's not my kid, do whatever you want. And then like he's also like, they're trying to build like a dynamic between the two, which semi fell flat for me.
Oh, like I felt that was pretty like quintessential Cameron, right? Because he's obviously like, that is the central theme of this movie, right? It's like parents and children, but most particularly fathers and children, fathers and sons, right? And like that's the thread that runs through all these characters. So the moment they introduce Spider as this guy's son, you know that this is going to play into their dynamic. And what I really liked about it was that all conventional wisdom leads you to believe that towards the end, Spider is not only going to help Courage, but like probably side with him. And that's what they lean towards also. That's what the movie suggests, that he's gonna, change sides. But then it kind of doesn't do that, which I felt was very interesting, right? Because that's deliberate. Like Spider is an interesting character, because obviously he's going to be important probably in the next movie. All these kids are going to be important in the next movie.
Yeah, that's the idea, to like build the kids into the future protagonists at some point.
Yeah, and I really like that, he didn't like outright commit to the factionalism in this film, but he's hinting towards it. Like, it's that Luke thing.
And it's also like, here it's influenced by the fact that he doesn't look like any of them, right? Which is going to play a part in future movies as well. Is that there's always like, I mean, forget like the humans who don't look like them. That's why they're like all the scenes outsiders. Even like Jake and Neytiri's children who look like them are like labeled as outsiders, right? They're called like names by the Methina clan, and they're like, yeah, you have like 5 fingers. Like, why do you have 5 fingers? You don't have 4. So like, there's that playing as levels also, that they're meant to look like outsiders even though they look like them. So obviously like Spider is almost like a whole other category, right? Like, he doesn't look like them. So obviously there's like a mutual distrust between anyone who's Navi and who's like human. So that obviously is going to play into a part in his feelings, right? He's, even though he wants to be a part of this family, he's never going to be fully allowed to be a part of this family.
I think, that's what makes Spider an interesting character, because he doesn't feel like he belongs, and that's probably going to like motivate whatever mission that he goes on in the next movie. Although we just get like a tease of his internal conflict in this one, which I thought was nicely done, even though the character is very broadly kind of sketched out.
Yeah, but that's also like true of
all the characters.
Avatars, exactly, characters in general. Like, there isn't like any character who's like given like layers and layers.
They're kind of archetypes, right? All of them.
Yeah.
Or at least the male characters. I don't think that Cameron is, I mean, he has obviously famously written iconic female characters, but in this universe, I don't think like Neytiri, for example, has much to do, particularly in this film. Kate Winslet drops by, has nothing to do.
I though like couldn't recognize that Kate Winslet was there for like a long while, and then I was like, I think midway through the movie, like when the second hour was like going on and on and on, I was like, wait, this movie's supposed to have Kate Winslet, right? Where is she? And then I was like, okay, I'm going to try to identify whose voice is Kate Winslet.
I mean, it's kind of like interesting to think about it, because it's completely pointless casting. It's not like you're casting Kate Winslet for Kate Winslet.
But then that's like just true of anyone you cast in an Avatar movie, right? Like, unless like they're on the human side, like Eddie Falco shows up like for another pointless role. Like, sure, why her when they could have been anyone else? You could have paid like 10 times less or something.
I mean, I was like, hilariously, she forgot that she was like, she didn't even know. Like, did you see that thing?
Yeah, I read about that. Like, this is the point of the Avatar movies, I guess, is that just take forever. The actors in them have no clue when the movie's coming out. Which like even Spider, right? Like, I think when he was cast, he was like 12 and he's 18 now.
So I read somewhere that Cameron had to like literally contact the New Zealand government to allow them to shoot during the pandemic. Because the kid who was playing Spider was aging so fast that even if they'd waited like a year,
Right.
he would have been, and he's like human
Aged out of the
form,
role.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, which is why like all the children's shows happen very back-to-back production, right? If they have multiple seasons. Because
yeah.
they can't wait. Like they are like, before it, like they age out and their voice breaks and stuff like that. Especially for live action, like they have to get stuff in the can.
Yeah. And since like this kid he's like the only human presence in the Navi
Does that
world.
mean like the next movie then is like gonna have to like do a forced time jump? Because like all the kids, I'm guessing, have aged out of their roles. Although he'll just recast everyone.
So no, here's my theory, right? So he said that he's the third one's coming out almost certainly, right? Regardless of how this one
because it's been
does.
shot. It's literally like shot and in post-production.
And he said that if in case he isn't able to make any more and this is the end, the third one has like some amount
like finale,
of
closure. Yeah. I feel like it's like the closure, like from what his comments, I feel like it's the closure of like Jake Sully and Neytiri's story. And then like he's leaving room to like expand on the kid's storyline later.
Yeah.
So like a 3 and 4 could have like a shift in actual protagonist and probably an even bigger jump in timeline, like when the kids maybe become adults or something. So basically I feel like the trilogy is basically like for these
Jake.
adults. Yeah, for Jake, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I feel is probably going to happen. Like Jake's story is going to conclude with whatever the next movie is. Probably going to end with him dying, right?
Yeah, this is how like blockbusters end.
Or like even from what he's, like the stories that he's drawing from, literally all of them was like they have to die, right? Like he's Moses, Jesus, Caesar, ape, whatever. Yeah,
like 1,000 inspiration mixed in one. Like there's a Hindu god stuff also going on, right? At least like on a visual level.
And the MacGuffin this time, it's no longer the unobtainium. It's something called literally Amrit.
Yeah, which I'm sure will change in the third movie. I feel like every movie will have its own like useless MacGuffin that no one cares about, only just to drive the plot forward. Which in this case, it doesn't even drive the plot. It shows up, I think, like 130 minutes in.
Yeah, and he's not taking it like he's not joking around. Like he's taking it very seriously. Like pehle film mein unobtainium tha, and now this like the requirements have changed. So now it's this like what is it? It's like the fountain of youth, right?
Yeah,
is what.
Yeah, because like the humans don't age if they get that.
And he's playing it straight. Like there's no eye winking nonsense. Ki ye to bakwas hai. Like ha, it doesn't matter. Like for him, this is like as earnest as anything else in the movie, which I kind of admire also. And I mean, I don't want to like bring the RRR comparison, but that's my belief why people seem to like that movie is for similar reasons, because it's so earnest. There's no sense that they're undercutting their own, reality that they've set. Like they're taking everything seriously.
James Cameron is not like making a Marvel movie or anything. Like he believes in his world, like, which is why like even the thematic stuff out of it, like even when it's like with Jake Sully and everything, like there's no one like like standing next to him doing like comic relief stuff. It's only
there's
him
no comic.
in the
frame. It's so refreshing, right? Which is like nice. I like it. Like you have to take yourself seriously first, right? Which is why which like I think works if your writing has more depth. Like I mean the family and father side of it just like bounced off my head. I'm like, this is so like basic. Like he says it twice, right? Jake Sully, I think once near the beginning and then once near the end, where he's like, a father protects. That is his purpose. And I'm just like, bro, stop. Like this is so traditional, so like whatever 19th century like family roles. I'm just like, I can't deal with this. Like this is your like after having your own kids, like whatever 4 kids that Cameron has, this is what he could drill it down to. Like that's his understanding of like fatherhood. I think that is actually his understanding of fatherhood, and this is his way of like real. Yes, it is. And the movie is about that, right? The movie is him acknowledging that his way of parenting is obsolete and not ideal.
But I'm not sure about that. I'm not like, I think I'm ready to give like Cameron credit for that. I feel like literally his understanding stops there.
I mean, it's up for debate whether or not he expands on this realization.
Right.
But the fact that he has this realization, and don't forget that, Jake Sully is a Marine, right? So this would probably be the only way that he knows how to address situations, like
but in my mind that was like a deflection. It feels like a deflection that like Cameron is showing that oh no, this character is thin, but whereas to me it seems like Cameron's writing is thin.
Okay. I mean, I felt that it's very much a movie about Cameron himself, and just him struggling to kind of express what he feels. Like there is like obviously Jake Sully loves his kids, right? There's no doubt about that. It's just the way how he expresses his love is just
Yeah, which is
wonky.
weird. Like his kids like don't say like yes, papa. They say yes, sir.
Yeah, which is
Like it's literally
there,
like
right?
military drilling has happened throughout the family.
He is a drill sergeant, right?
Yeah.
And when Nitayam dies, like Netiri has like she's
Mother's
like
reaction, like she's wailing.
furious, right? She goes like beast mode, but he snaps right back into the marine that he is, right? He's
Because
formulating a
like
plan.
at one level he's literally treating his children like his
Soldiers.
deputies. Yeah.
But then once the rescue mission following Nitayam's death, there is like this entire emo flashback montage which is so Cameron, right? Where he's like recalling Nitayam's life from when he was like born, and then their bonding moments
Basically the
together.
scenes that we were shown in the beginning. Yeah.
हाँ, तो वो फिर से होता है, which I'm guessing is like a suggestion that he is changing or transforming because he hasn't had literally any time to grieve his death. Like he was the first one who almost kind of instantly buried the reality of what was happening. Like I don't think he actually recognized that he has lost a son in that moment because he had two other children to save. But then the assumption is with
also
that
like,
whatever.
as we said, like it's soldier training. Like he's been taught his life to like drilled in such a way that like you have to, even if you lose like a colleague on the battlefield, you have to like stay in focus on the mission.
I felt that Jake Sully was a more interesting character in this film than the last film, which might seem odd because he has so little to do plot wise. But
I think like the character benefits from the fact that he's surrounded by like characters who like he cares for now, right? The first film, he was almost like the audience thrown into the world. Like he didn't matter as much as he was like a vessel for us to see the world through.
yeah, and it was very much like him learning the ropes, And in this one, it's 10 years have passed, so it's interesting to kind of see him struggle with his Navi side and the human side also. Like it's fun to see where the human side kicks in and where the Navi side kicks in, and the overlaps. So I thought that was nicely done. But then all of this, has collateral damage, which I felt was like the last movie was also a romance, which is none of that is in this one. Like Neteri is like just a very tertiary character in this one, which I felt was a little disappointing. But then
which is why like the
a
romance
dozen
this time they're
people.
shifting to like even romance is shifting to younger characters. Right? Like they're trying to build them for the future movies as we've spoken about. So obviously they like have to start building relations among them as well if we need to like care about them in the future. Like especially between the kids of the Methkina clan and the Jake Sully's kids.
And I think like in the days after watching this movie, I've kind of thought about more of the bricklaying that he's doing here for the future. But while watching it, didn't really stand out. Like it's just in hindsight, like in a Marvel movie, you can tell that while watching Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, that Riri Williams is supposed to have her own show, and it feels very like you could cut that entire storyline out and the movie wouldn't hurt, right? But here, while watching this film, I didn't really recognize
That's possibly because like he's tying it
laying.
on two levels, right? The first level is like he's hiding the budding friendships and the romances that are happening with the teenagers, but he's putting the second layer of that is while you are seeing the Pandora's oceans and islands being explored. So it's the character moments happen during the said like exposition moments. So it's in a way, I guess, disguised or hidden.
It's very nicely disguised. Also, I feel that there is payoff to whatever he sets up individually in this movie, and that kind of helps on that account. But yeah, like you said, like the character work, which is my favorite part of the movie, is that hour-long stretch in which nothing happens. Is vital, right? Because you spend so much time with these people. Like last week when you were talking about emancipation, that's what I was wondering. You're spending so much time with this one character, and
but you're just throwing him into
sense.
a situation.
And here also they're doing things like they're going for swimming lessons, right? But as compared to like fighting massive battles, that's nothing. So instead you see them like exchange glances. These guys are like blue aliens, but you recognize when they exchange glances. You recognize when Kiri kind of discovers that she is at home in the water, right? And you get a sense of all that. And then not to mention the friendship that, what's his name, the son Loak forms with the whale.
Yeah, there's literally like, I mean, if out of the 45 or 50-minute like second arc, there's a sizable chunk devoted to that, right? Like the first time they drop him off in that side of like the ocean, and then he's like attacked by whatever the shark whale thingy, and uske baad again like he goes back, and then again he's like, this is like, it's almost like a mini 3-act structure of like his friendship with that outcast whale, Tulkun, whatever the local name,
Payakan.
Inside the bigger movie.
So I've been trying to convince whoever's listening or whoever's willing to listen to me that the whale is the protagonist of this movie.
The whale is definitely the protagonist of the third act, right? Like that's not even arguable. Like, I mean, it's not, you can't even argue against that, because it's literally the action for at least I think like a sizable, like probably like 2-3 minutes is literally framed from the whale's point of view, as the whale takes revenge and saves the human beings who are like have gotten pushed into a corner. And that was probably my like favorite part of the film, is that they turned like it's a non-humanoid figure and literally made them like the hero, right? It's like when the hero barges in, like punches punches a bunch of dudes and then saves the day. Like that moment happened with that whale. And for the first time in my life at a cinema, an audience was cheering for a whale doing action.
Exactly. And that is my entire argument for this movie, right? In my
screening, but like I don't see enough of that across the movie, which is why like I'm not as enthusiastic about Avatar 2 as you. But like those, like I think the third act is definitely the highlight of the movie. And then within that, the choreography and the cinematography of like, you know, the way he goes under the surface and comes above the surface again and again, and the way he like flits between that is obviously a massive improvement. Like having seen Black Panther like last month, I was like, okay, yeah, this is what Ryan Coogler needed to do, but obviously he doesn't have the understanding of that. You know, like the third
understanding nahi hai aur paisa nahi hai aur time nahi hai.
Paisa to hai, come on. There's like Disney's funding both these things. It's just like the conceptualization, right? Like, I mean, I saw that like he moved the Calamity Battle to like Ryan Coogler onto the ocean. I was like, oh, this is a great opportunity. Like you can do something refreshing and new, which you haven't done. And he's just disappointed. And like on Avatar 2, like Cameron shows how to like do a good long action sequence on water. And within that, as I said, the highlight is the whale moment.
There's so much in the third act, right? So there's the larger action set piece which is happening, right? Which is, Cameron is one of the few who can do that. Like I think along with Ridley Scott or John Woo or someone, right? Where you get the sense of the geography, which is very important in movies like this. You know, it's so many moving parts. You get a perfect understanding of who's where and what they have to achieve. Once that is done, he does the wise thing of putting all that aside and focusing on 3-4 log.
Yeah.
Right. And he's able to do that because he's done all the groundwork, right? He's able to deliver that emotional payoff with the whale because he's spent so much time building up.
Yeah, he's literally the whale has been talking in like papyrus subtitles to us for like a long time. And like really we see the world through even the whale's eyes. Like the entire world goes like sepia and like subtitles appear and it's like, okay, like we're doing this now, whale cam.
Or subtitle bhi kya hai? When Loak asks him to tell him his story, the whale's like, no, it's too sad. Like that is literally what he said. I'm like, you aren't dealing with subtle, like that is it, all face value. And that is what I dig about this movie, right? And going back to, you know, what you said about the cheering works because the whale is a fully fleshed out character, right?
Yeah.
In my screening, people cried when Nitayam died. And Nitayam not even a character. He's just there. But by the end, you're so invested in the story. You're like, oh my God, this kid has died, right? And then you kind of remember that that's the first thing that we saw in this movie. Like he's laid it up. We saw that kid being born, right? Even though we know nothing about him. All that is so meticulous. You know, nothing is wasted. You get the sense that 1 ghanta उन लोगों ने कुछ नहीं किया. They just went for a swimming lesson. But even that is important. Like, which is I guess where the classic storytelling comes in, right? He's so sure about the story that he wants to tell and he's so confidently telling it. Like there's no way that you could go wrong. And that's like my whole admiration for both these movies, in fact. That's where it comes from. You know,
Oh, the first one I am very much divided on.
Okay. What
Yeah.
was like? What was the issue with the first one?
It's basically, I think, Avatar 2's issues, I think, which I have, it's just expanded. It's just like even thinner story, thinner characters, like too like black and white in moments, like too opaque, like too in your face. And the action itself, I think, which is good, but that's only because in comparison to the other elements, way like I felt like in terms of at least like overhyped in terms of what it earned. But it's not like I'm valuing off that, but a very okay movie for me. So like like Avatar 2 is definitely an improvement on that, but it's still like it's an improvement on that. It's not like a great movie in itself for me.
I mean, I don't know, but like both the massive like mainstream Hollywood action movies this year that I've kind of enjoyed is this one and Top Gun, right? And I feel like both of them are very similar in terms of how elemental they are.
Yeah, but Top Gun, like as we discussed, I felt like that was so much more like precise and drilled. Like I understand what like Cameron is going for Avatar 2, but eventually like it's, I feel like, see, what I would drill it down to is like for me, movies like which are great, I can rewatch them once every like 6 months or once every year in my life. So Top Gun is a movie, it's so drilled, like it's so precise, I can rewatch it like if you told me like right now. But Avatar 2, if you told me like, okay, obviously not right now because I've only seen it like 1 week ago, but even if you like in 5 months time, you were like, okay, now do you want to rewatch it? I'll be like, I'm not so sure if I want to go through like 3 hours of that again.
But I mean, I'm not sure if I will want to watch all 3 hours of it immediately at some point I might. But then I do think I will watch portions of it for sure. Like I do want to see how the underwater stuff translates to, whatever your home device
is. A smaller screen, yeah. Which, by the way, now that we're talking presentation, I guess we should talk about the presentation of the movie. Like,
which I did not know, by the way, going into it.
I think I read like somewhere briefly where, because I don't think I read like a direct reference, but I read that he was talking about like HFR in general, like high frame rate.
And he was saying that he's mixing it up, right?
Yeah, like his opinion of it. I read it. I didn't read like how the movie was actually like presented. And then
but
it started.
I assumed like every HFR movie, you'd have to have like dedicated screenings, jo ki impossible. Like India mein to kahan hi hoga. So it wasn't even something on my horizon.
No, but the thing is, like, in the time since the Hobbit movies and the first Avatar movie, which is like, I think the Hobbit movie itself, like, it's been 10 years now.
And Gemini Man.
Yeah, but that was like recent, but I think they never attempted to bring it. That's the difference. Like, Cameron is so like, he's particular, right? He's like Nolan. Like, if he's made a choice, he's going to ensure that the entire world can see it that way, which is possible. So Gemini Man, I think Ang Lee just like threw away control. He was like, okay, the studio will do it. And I know like from people who worked at Paramount in India that they tried to do it in India, but they like couldn't figure it out very easily and they gave up. But in this case, obviously, clearly Cameron has like, what he done is like even like others. So the thing is now India's mostly like digital projectors, right? We have no film. Forget mostly. All it's digital projectors. And what he's basically done is that even normal projectors, which are capable of 48 FPS, but can't like switch and stuff, even those projectors can handle it because it's like being played. What basically happens is the 24 frame wala footage, the dialogue scenes, every frame will just be played twice. So it'll look 24 even though it's 48. So that's why he's achieved it. So I don't know. I haven't gone to a normal screen. I've only seen it once in IMAX, so I can't vouch for this. But it should work in most screens because of that approach.
Okay, so I watched it in regular 3D.
Oh, okay.
I didn't watch it in IMAX.
And it worked for you, right? Like you could notice the difference between action and dialogue.
Yeah.
So like clearly it's working.
So when it happened the first time, I recoiled like physically. I went like, what the hell was that? Because I've never seen it, right? I've never seen high frame rate. We've never had it here.
Yeah. If I've seen high frame rate, I've only seen it on like TV for like sports. I've never seen it like on a big screen. And obviously I've never seen switching happen.
So at the beginning, it's kind of disorientating, right?
Yeah, it's very jarring.
Yeah, you won't get, because there's no like motive. It's like again, not to bring up emancipation, but there's no clear idea as to why certain scenes, like you get an idea that they're flying now, so it's high frame rate. But then it's not always high frame rate when they're flying, right? So it's just certain.
And it's not always like
shots
standard frame rate when they're talking. Like so he will sometimes switch multiple times during a scene, and that just I was like, what is happening? Why are you doing that?
Which is crazy. So here's my question. all the underwater stuff is high frame rate, and it's amazing, right? Everything underwater is amazing in this movie because of the high frame rate and the whatever advancements in 3D that we've had in the last whatever years, right? But would it have worked better if only the underwater stuff was high frame rate and he saved it for those moments when they take that first dive? Or do you think that he's kind of teaching you how to watch it in those random shots leading up to the underwater thing? Is that deliberate? Like, I'm guessing it is, right?
Yeah, but like I'm still like unsure if like this is the right call, like overall. Like I'm not sure presenting a movie in two different frame rates is the correct way to go about anything, because the only where before this movie I had seen cut scenes and people talking to each other in high frame rate was in video games, right? Like because of new age like graphics cards, the PS5 and whatever, even if you have a good enough PC, you can output like new age like 4K video games at like whatever 60 FPS or I think 50 FPS or whatever. So like, I've seen those cutscenes, and the thing is, because of Avatar's like Cameron's choices with Avatar, where he's like doing motion capture plus a lot of CGI, it looks like a video game. Like it's not, it's live action, but it looks closer to a video game because of like all the blue Navi stuff around it. So
there's
like
no blur.
Yeah. So my constant like almost like in a way annoyance, which like which happened during the movie, was like, wait, am I like watching a video game? And then my brain would expect to be like pressing buttons because the scene is ending and like I have to do some action. But instead the dialogue scene would just like convert to action and I would just like not be playing it. And I'm like, what is going on? Like this is very like, it's like making me aware I'm in a movie theater, which like you don't want. So I think I'm still not sure this is the correct way to like, I feel like he's going to do the same thing because he already shot Avatar 3, so which means we'll get the same thing. But if he hasn't shot Avatar 4, I think he needs to like listen to like reactions for how audiences are doing and recalibrate.
I agree with what you're saying, but I think I experienced that only with the like land and air portions. Like I felt that this stood out and didn't really flow with the visuals of the movie. But the moment that they went underwater, it all felt hyper real. And I did not get the sense that I'm watching a video game. I did not get the sense that I'm in a movie theater. I felt like I was in the pool, right? Which is, I'm guessing, what they were going for.
Yeah,
like they want you to
but like,
feel like you're in the water.
That would like have worked for me as well, like that emotion. I think but like I'm also not sure because I've never seen a full movie in HFR, but like if he had kept 48 FPS throughout, then that emotion would never break for me, because then it would just be smooth. There would be more like switching, and there would be back and forth. So I think that way it would be better, but then I'm not sure how it works when you see like dialogue scenes and just normal conversation scenes in HFR. Like are we okay with that, or does it feel like just watching real life?
No, it does. It doesn't feel okay. It doesn't feel okay when... So, I'm assuming that when you're underwater, the movement is slower, right? Like...
Yeah, because your human bodies or Navi bodies can't like move as fluidly or as quickly.
Yeah, and that is crucial to kind of reading the high frame rate in a way that doesn't break your brain. Whereas when they're above ground, they're moving... It's almost like you're watching iPhone footage, right?
Yeah.
And that is not like, we have been trained to accept 24 frames per second as the cinematic language. And I don't know if it's easy to kind of break that illusion in our brains. I'm sure if every movie is made in 48
every movie,
FPS,
then you just get retrained.
But Abhi, you can't do it by this method, which is like stops and starts, right? You either go whole hog or you pick your things, like, which I think if he restricts it to the underwater stuff, it's fine. It's not even jarring. It's actually immersive. But then this strategy is...
But the thing is like, not every movie is going to be in Pandora's oceans, right? Like they will keep changing. So then how does he keep redefining the language of like, where is he going to apply it? Which is why I think he's just applying it like wherever he feels like there's a lot of like camera or character movement quickly.
Yeah, like the flight sequences in particular, they do not work in high frame rate at all. There's not a lot of it. I think this is a handful of shots, but none of them worked. It in fact felt fake, which is not probably what they want, right? Because like in this movie particularly, that some of the close-ups, like it feels like makeup, not digital makeup. Like it feels like actually someone sat on painted people's faces, which is really cool. But yeah, it does feel like like probably 80 years ago when they started experimenting with color or sound and then 3D. It wasn't a smooth transition, and it wasn't uniform throughout the movie. Like all those things happened in bursts. And it feels very much like that. So
Yeah, it feels like a work in progress. I think that's what you're
it
trying to
feels
say.
like a work in progress. But that being said, the underwater stuff is like incredible. So yeah,
Guess that does it.
I will watch it again probably in IMAX this time. I couldn't get tickets for IMAX. But yeah, in a week or so.
Okay then.
Yep.
That's all for this episode of The Long Take. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at The Long Take Pod. You can write to us at thelongtakepod@gmail.com. Please leave us a rating and a review with us this episode, and we will see you next week. Actually, we will see you again this week, given how late we've been with this episode. Goodbye.